Well, I'm sitting here waiting for the lights to turn bright. Got my controller ready, but the stream's taking all night. You're chatting away, but I'm dying to play. Give me that action, can't wait another day. Checking the clock, taking slow like a metronome. Impatiently waiting for you to come on. I'm itching for that game, ready to dominate. These delays got me starting to hate. Oh, you man, won't you hurry up and start the show? Got my fingers twitching and my enthusiasm's flowing. This waiting ain't right, can't take it no more. I need those games, you may open up the door.
The following film is presented in its complete theatrical version. It was rated R by the MPAA and may not be appropriate for children under 17. It is rated TV MA-LSV and contains strong language, sexual situations, violence, and nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion advised.
I like steak. One of these days I should learn to play this song. Wait a minute, Doobie, didn't you actually record the guitar work for this? I don't know, man. I've slept since then. I can tell you this much. I think it's in a totally different key than I am currently tuned to. How are you doing, everybody? It is a Tuesday night. It is a Tech Talk Tuesday. I am your host, and for this evening, your professor. I am Ubi, and if anybody out there is currently practicing, if you start playing Hot for Teacher, you are out of here. Just out. Just get out. I'm still in C. Much better. All right. So I have the guitar out, not because it needs to be, but because today's topic is one that'll actually affect this. And I should probably take a step back and say hello to everybody. Hey, Johnny 3Bar. Hi, Chris. How you doing? Brian, Jade from Jade Guitars. Steve Gunner is here tonight on time for once. BBM is with us. So, and 2 Yard just popped in. Good. That's a pretty good little crowd to start with tonight. I'm happy with that. So yes, we're going to talk tonight about guitar latency and one of the biggest culprits of it, which would be buffers. Now, before we get into it, let's talk a bit about what specifically the buffers and the latency are. I'm going to actually turn this off so it'll stop making scratchy noises in my ear. And we're going to switch to that view right there. So, when audio gets converted into digital, it creates... obviously, it goes from the analog signal, which is just a electrical impulse, and is converted into digitals, ones and zeros, which is done in a waveform, which mimics the wave that you would do for audio. So, and that takes processing power to do. Now, it's super fast for hardware to do, especially specialized hardware, like, for example, your interface or your sound card or whatever is being used to create sounds or capture sounds, in our case, where we're capturing on the interface. The thing is, in order for us to have a good quality experience, there has to be allowances taken in account for things like your hardware slowing down. For example, your computer processing a bunch of updates or doing a bunch of other processing at the same time while it's also trying to process audio. We want to have, as humans, we want to have a comfortable experience. We want to have a smooth sound. We don't want interrupts. We don't want artifacts. We don't want scratchy sounds. We don't want any of that sort of thing to happen to us. So what happens is the audio hardware and the software in your operating system will create a buffer. It will actually queue up a bunch of that sound before it farts. Wow, it may be farting at you, especially if you're listening to a fart drop, before it starts sending that sound to you. And so that is actually what might cause latency when we're trying to, for example, play a guitar and you strum a chord, you strum your string, and you want to hear it immediately. So I've got this turned off so I can't hear it. Let's reset that. There we go. So when I pluck that string, I'm hearing that A immediately in my ear, or in reality, not exactly immediately in my ear. Hey, Brand, how you doing? It's actually taking, on my system, about 8 to 10 milliseconds from when I pluck the string, for the string to vibrate, the pickup to catch that vibration and turn that into an electrical impulse, going through the pots, out to the jack, out from that jack to my cable, over into my interface. From the interface, it's taking that analog sound that has been generated by the pickups, converting it into digital, then going down a USB cable into my my PC, and from there into software, which then controls everything that's going on there. And then that software then taking it, running it through this mixing board, from this mixing board going into this program here, going the entire length of that chain of plugins here, back out, which then goes into here again, and from here it goes into one of these lanes, which then comes up to my headphones. The entire time that it takes for that sound, hey Ted, how you doing? To go from, like I said, when I pluck the string, when I pluck this A, to getting to my ear is about 8 to 10 milliseconds, and that's because I have my system dialed in. The way that happens is your system, when you install something on Windows, we'll talk about Mac in just a moment, but when you install something on Windows, it has what is considered a safe amount of buffering, so that it will give you the best sound with the lowest or basically no chance of it actually breaking up on you, because your system is running too slow, so you're not getting the full segment of the waveform that's being played for you. So this comes into what are called the actual buffers. Now, for a normal user, you never see these buffers. They don't mean a thing to you. But for us, as somebody who's playing guitar with a digital audio chain, they affect us and they matter. Out of the box, the buffers usually for a Windows system driver is 512, and for a ASIO driver usually defaults to 256. These will introduce latency, as Ted can tell you, because we just set his system up and dialed in his latency for his guitar yesterday. What'll happen is that will give you roughly about a 45 to 50 millisecond delay, and it is enough to throw you off. When you play it, when you pluck the string, you will hear it so much later that it will, your brain cannot process it fast enough. So it does that whole, the not having a monitor in a ballpark and hearing the sounds coming back at your ears, and so that's not playable. That's not live playable. So for recording, a lot of folks will not listen to themselves record. They will actually play straight in without listening to it, and then listen to it on playback. But if you want a live situation where you want to hear real time or almost real time audio back when you're playing your guitar, for example, like in streaming, I absolutely need to hear what I'm playing. You on the stream, the buffer wouldn't matter. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference because, you know, you hear it from the start. You're not playing; it's not throwing you off. But for me, it throws me off seriously. So what I had to do was I had to go in for mine. Mine's even more difficult than your average thing because the Fi-Fine does not only does not come with an ASIO driver. It's not a native ASIO device, and so I actually had to hack mine slightly to affect the buffering on the Fi-Fine. So I actually can't control it in the software, but what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at where you would control those sort of things. Now, I don't have ASIO for All installed. I was planning on getting it installed before tonight, but I did not get it done, so we won't be able to look at it. But we will look at where what the settings might look at. For example, if you do use Voice Meter like I do as your ASIO device. Also, sometimes you can control it in your DAW or within whichever program container that's running your effects like this. We're going to take a look at both those. We'll also get rid of Cannibal, and we'll take a look inside of Cakewalk, and we'll take a look inside of Reaper where these settings might be. Now, here's a spoiler for you. The thing that controls those settings could be the ASIO driver itself, or in my case, it could be Voicemeeter that's controlling them, or it could be the DAW. It really depends on how everybody is set up, because they all have the ability to listen to each other and ask, hey, what is my buffer supposed to be? Kind of like if you're in a band, you know, and you're all kind of trying to play on beat. Someone somewhere is going to be playing at some place, and everybody else is just going to fall in with them. There's not a universal single one device that always is going to be where that particular setting comes from. Sometimes they're all cooperative. If you change in one, it'll change them all. Or sometimes when you set something in one, it will automatically set, and you make a setting change on another one. The one that you set in the other one may be the kind that will automatically resend that setting out, like Ted and I ran into the other night, where we had a setting for his buffer set up in Voicemeeter, and Voicemeeter was like, hey, you told me it's going to be this setting, Jack, and we're going to change it to this setting. And we had to figure out exactly which one needed to be controlled on that. So in Voicemeeter, it's under the settings and menu. Again, if you're not using Voicemeeter, this won't directly help you, but these settings are going to be similar in every program that you're at. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to zoom in a bit so that you guys can see this better, maybe. If I grab the correct display, there it is. There we go. So you'll see over here, we have buffers. Now, in Voicemeeter, we actually have buffering for all types. MME, WDM, and KS, these are all different audio subsystems within Windows, and then ASIO as well. Buffer and clock is not used directly in what we're doing here. But as you can see here, I have the ASIO buffering here is listed at 256. And this one actually, if you set something in Voicemeeter is a dominant one. It will try to set it in all the other devices that are asking what our buffer should be. So 256 is, man, that's the absolute edge of where you might have a comfortable latency. Reality is you're going to want to try to change that to something lower, 128 or 96 if you can get it, 48 if it works. Here's the trick, though, with Windows and ASIO. What you do with that in Windows and ASIO is that you will keep lowering your sample buffers. So right now it's 256. I could drop it to, say, 128 and see what it sounds like. I'm not going to change this because it will make my sound cut out, and obviously then you guys won't be able to hear me. But what you do is you set it, you keep lowering it in Windows, and you play. So for example, if I made that change, I would see what it sounds like, and I'm not breaking up anything in there. As a matter of fact, we'll go to a clean tone so you can hear that we have no breakup. And it helps if I hit the right clean tone. So you're not hearing any scratchiness. So we're good there. What I would do is I would keep lowering it until I started to get the same kind of artifacts and sounds you would get when you're clipping and it's too hot. It gives you that scratchy tone, that kind of dropout sounds. Once you hit that, you will back it back up until you're at as low as you can go without it breaking up on you. Exactly. You have those popping sounds and they're not good. That will be, once you get that dialed in, that you've hit that spot there where your hardware and software, that is as fast as it could process. So you can never get any better now. Now, I said a key thing in there, your hardware. Your interface will determine how low you can buffer, because the interface is the primary spot where you're going to run into a bottleneck on how fast latency you can have in there. These days, anything $50 and up, you can get near real-time latency out of. I was able to get near real-time latency out of that Rocksmith cable, and it's not even an interface. So, but having said that, the amount of time it takes for your audio interface to convert the signal into digital, that's time that you've used in the process. Every single plug-in that you add on the chains after that, you will add a little bit more time that something is being processed on that audio before it comes back to your ear. So you will hit a point where you have so much stuff on it, especially if it's something that's really resource intensive, like for example my pitch shifter. You will get to the point where you will introduce latency into your chain. And so the faster your interface is, the least amount of time it will bottleneck you, which means the more stuff you can put on your chain as you go out. That also means the faster your CPU processor is on your computer, also affects how much that you can put on your signal chain. But again, the buffering is the part that is going to be the most, that will limit you. It's kind of like a governor on an engine. It will limit how quickly your turnaround will be, because it takes X amount of milliseconds to buffer each sample. And so if 256 samples takes 25 to 30 milliseconds to buffer, just that's how long that takes. That's how many samples go by in that time period. And then you will never have a faster latency than that amount there. So that's why buffering is your first one. You back it down until you basically take it off, take the governor off until it runs too hot, basically, and then you know where your hardware and audio all deal with. So yeah, a USB audio makes it worse. It depends. It really depends on the USB audio device, because the USB audio will actually, it converts the signal. That USB mic has a mini sound card on it that is doing that conversion for the signal. So it goes through the connection on the microphone down into the, yeah, that happens, Johnny. So yes, those can be very slow. Upper end ones, maybe not so much. They may be nice and fast. But so if you switch to an XLR mic, that means you're going through a digital audio interface. A digital audio interface is designed to be as fast as it possibly can. So that's why it's not necessarily the connection type be a USB or an XLR mic. It's the hardware that is doing that conversion, because they're both converting the impulses into the mic, which turns into electricity, which is an analog signal, into the ones and zeros. And it's that conversion of that analog signal into the digital that takes time. And so if a physical piece of hardware, like an interface like this, is purpose-built, designed for it, it's fast. A microphone is not necessarily for real time. For example, a lot of people are using a microphone. Like if I'm using a microphone here to talk to you on stream, I don't have to hear it super fast in my ears. And when it gets to you, it could be any amount of time between now and half a second to a second to even longer, depending on latency on the platform. So those, they don't care about it on the USB. You're not getting off topic. This is the exact topic that we're talking about here. Buffering is just part of latency. So your latency latency is, in this particular case, it's the USB itself on the microphone. It works as a sound card, just like any other sound card, even back in the day when you would put a sound card in the computer. It's got the circuit for that sound card, which is, and all the sound card does is it converts a digital to analog or an analog to a digital. And the USB mic, that in that USB setup, either in the cable itself, if it's got a big thick piece on the cable, or inside of the mic, if it's a USB connection into the back of the mic, is where that circuitry for that sound card lives. And that's where that conversion is happening. They use a cheaper converter on most USB mics because, again, the USB mics generally are not needed to be low latency mics. So they don't care. So they save money by using systems that aren't as quick. So it's that part there, that conversion of the signal is usually where you're going to pick up the latency on a USB mic. And unfortunately, there's usually not a lot you can do about that. There's just a maximum amount of speed of which that conversion is there. Having said that, it also could be the drivers for that USB mic, as we're talking about here with it may have a higher buffering rate. And if there was drivers that you could have gotten into, check to see, oh yeah, it's buffering 1024. That's almost a half a second delay. And if there's a way to roll that down, then that mic may have been able to do lower latency. But again, it depends on the hardware manufacturer. It depends on the software they create. It depends on the operating system you're using. It depends on which version of USB. Is it a USB 2? Is it a USB 3? Is it a USB 3.1? Is it a Lightning? It's all these things may affect the speed on those. So the short answer is yes, it's the USB mic. The long answer is it's something to do with the USB mic, but maybe not the mic itself. So like I said, if I had a situation like, for example, like we had with Ted, where if I come in here and pluck a string, and that A is not right when I'm plucking that string and it's throwing me off, one of the first things that I would do would be exactly what we did with Ted, was to go look at his buffers. And we dropped Ted's buffering from 256 down to 96. And suddenly when he would pluck a string, he was hearing it almost immediately enough in his ear that it sounded like the real time. So, like I said, that's what one of the biggest killers, and it's actually a part of your initial setup for getting your latency under control. So one of the places, again, in Windows is the ASIO driver itself. In my case, I'm using Voicemeeter as my ASIO driver. The next place, though, is actually in whatever you're in. So if I go into Tools and Options here in Cannibal, you'll notice here, I've got a buffer size, just like we had on that other screen. Let me zoom in so that you can see it. There it is. So as you can see here, we have a buffer size. So this particular one, this Cannibal Light, does not allow you to, unless there is an exposed multiple buffer size, it doesn't allow you to grab control of the buffers. So as you can see, my only option is 512, which is the default buffering that is sent with the ASIO for Voicemeeter. Even though I make that change in Voicemeeter, which was set for 256, when it sends it out to it ignores other devices, so it sends the default 512. So doesn't make a big difference. But I can tell you right now, based off of my signal chain, you can see right here where it says buffer duration 10 milliseconds. So 10.67 is basically the average of when I send a note through, I hear it. And anything, once you get above 10 milliseconds up to 20 milliseconds, that's roughly the time when it starts being too far out of sync for most people to be able to play music with. That's actually one of the reasons why if you get too physically far away, like on a stage, you actually can get to the point where you're out of sync even with your bandmates. But I digress on that. So that's another place. We'll go take a look at some other software places where that might happen. So let's go with Cakewalk. We'll load that up. Cakewalk is under Edit and Preferences, and we have Driver Settings. And on this one here, the buffer size has a slide in here. This is for the mixing latency. That is actually not your ASIO latency. So in Cakewalk itself, it doesn't allow you to adjust the ASIO latency. There's always a button on anything that's using an ASIO usually that will bring up your control panel. It doesn't work for Voicemeeter because Voicemeter's control panel is in the settings. But if you have like ASIO for all, or if you have an actual driver, an ASIO driver that comes with your device, if you click this button, it's going to bring up whatever control panel it is that is used to control it. But this is another place that latency might get introduced. For example, your DAW may introduce additional latency because the DAW here could additionally, I could add additional latency into the buffering in the DAW, which means if that was set to something higher, Cakewalk would be Cakewalk would be having lag, audio lag, as opposed to like another program that may not have it. And we'll go take a look at Reaper. Because I don't remember the settings on Reaper. It's under options, preferences. Yes, there it is. Options, preferences. There is a buffering section in here, which is tries to do some additional buffering for you. Under the device, we have the ASIO, and this one allows you to attempt to set it. You can put a check mark in here and set what the buffer that you want it to be. And it will attempt to send that out on the chain and say, hey guys, we're going to buffer at 256 or whatever it is. So again, all of these settings in Windows, it's a little annoying in that it's all over the place. And that's one of those times where for Windows, it's just worse. Now, for you folks that are on Mac, I'm sure you've been waiting patiently to hear what I have to say. Here's what I have to say about it. You have buffers on a Mac, but they generally aren't needed to be adjusted because Macs themselves. Give me just a second. Let me pull my notes up here real fast. Why are you not? There we go. Okay. So Macs use waiting for my notes to finish pulling up here. Hey, TSA. There we go. So Macs use Core Audio, and it is actually a pre-built system designed for low latency, high performance audio. It's built from the ground up, as opposed to Windows, which had a audio system that was there pre-built and everything is used in it. And then after the fact, people started using high quality, high definition audio. And so they had to come up with a system to put on top of it, which is the ASIO system. Mac doesn't have that. Mac has Core Audio, which is basically ASIO on steroids. It literally is designed to consistently make sure performance across all of your audio apps are as tight and as low latency as possible by default. And a lot of times it's lower latency even than ASIO dialed in as best as you can on a Windows machine. It uses buffering as well, but it controls its own buffers. You can directly manage those buffers, but it's usually a worse situation than letting it manage itself. And it allows direct integration. So everything that I do in Voicemeeter is already pre-built into Core Audio. So audio change, you can send audio from multiple sources into what's called a virtual mic. and that can be sent into an application, and then that application's out, then becomes a source that you can change and put into another application. There's all the wild chaining and streaming that I do is just comes native in it. So basically, the way latency works on a Mac is, as long as you've got a good hardware, and by good, it could be a Focusrite or an Apogee or anything like that. I mean, the Fi-Fine here is good as far as that's concerned. Your round trip is off going to be 10 millisecond or less, just out of the box. It's almost difficult to get crackling or dropouts in a Mac environment. So you can adjust it. You saw where I was looking in Reaper and those things where it had the adjustments in like Reaper and Ableton and those sort of things. You can go in and make that adjustment there, and it will, that will adjust the buffering if you needed to, but really, generally you don't. Now, there are things that could cause you issues on a Mac. The same type of things that cause some issues on Windows can appear on a Mac, but they're not as prevalent. So like background processes, like for example, if like Spotlight is doing your indexing, or if like Time Machine is doing the snapshotting of it, that can create some glitches if your buffering is low because it's using a bunch of system resources. The interface itself, if it's not an actual class compliant interface, like the UM2 from Behringer, they generally don't perform well on a Macintosh, so you will get latency or dropouts from those. Heavier processing, like throwing a bunch of processes in like GarageBand. GarageBand's effects and settings are usually heavier than like a standard effect that you would add with like from Reaper. Those can cause it, which is basically, again, the same sort of things that would cause it on a Windows. It's just significantly less chance of that happening to you. So there you go. Latency and buffering. Hopefully that makes it as clear as mud for you. And now it's time for us to go talk to Ted, because it's time for Ted to start up his live. Jack? If you have any additional questions or problems, reach out to me, vub@gmail.com. I will be happy to work with you individually. I talked longer than I planned to tonight. I had planned to give you an open forum to ask questions, but we got to go, Jack. It is time for Ted to talk guitars and life. I will see you over there, and thanks very much for joining us on tonight's Tech Talk.